What's up, everyone? Today I am here to review the very first Goosebumps book in the new Goosebumps series, House of Shivers. This is book number 1, Scariest Book Ever. I actually just got this in the mail the other day and sat down and read it in a single sitting. I think it took me like a little over an hour, hour and a half maybe to read through this. I was excited to check out the new Goosebumps series. A friend of mine actually read this already and he wanted me to read it to know my thoughts on it. So yeah, I read this in one sitting and I'm going to do a quick review on this now. And this book is not at all what I was expecting or what I thought it was going to be. I'll just say that up front. It's quite a bit different. So I guess it's kind of a good thing. It wasn't super predictable. It was a little bit different than expected. So in Scariest Book Ever, our two main characters go to visit their Uncle Wendell. Their parents are going on some business trip to London, I think it is, and they're dropping them off at their uncle's house that they haven't seen in like forever, pretty much, so they don't even know who this guy is really. So their parents are dropping them off at this guy's house that they probably haven't met since they were babies. And they drive out into the woods through like this really long, twisted, winding road, drop them off in like the middle of the forest at this big old house, at their uncle's house. And the parents pretty much just leave them there before they even find out if their uncle is home or not. And this setup really kind of harkens back to How to Kill a Monster. At least that's what it made me think of. Kind of a very similar setup there. And basically the kids are left with this guy that they've never met. They knock on the door. Nobody seems to answer. They're not really sure if anybody's home. They decide to explore the house. And then they go inside the house and they come across this big guy who introduces himself as Uncle Wendell. But he's a very strange character. He just has some strange mannerisms. They're not really 100% sure about this guy. He's just kind of a weirdo. And he tells them a lot of weird stories about the forest and creatures living in this forest that surrounds the house. It's called the Wayward Forest. So they don't really know what to make of this guy exactly. And then it turns out he also has a daughter named Jessie that they had no idea about. And I believe, doesn't really go into a lot of detail about her character, but I think she's around the main character's age, maybe a little bit older, or in her teens maybe. And then from there, their Uncle Wendell proceeds to tell them about this book that was stolen from him called The Scariest Book Ever. So yes, The Scariest Book Ever is actually not about this book itself, but a book within the story here that's deemed to be the scariest book ever. We're not really given too much specific information on this book, but Uncle Wendell tells them that this book is very dangerous and it has to be found. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could destroy the world, that kind of thing, or unleash some kind of evil power. Reminds me a little bit of like the Goosebumps movie and how the book that brings all the monsters to life kind of reminds me of that a little bit. So yeah, basically the uncle tells them this lore behind this book a little bit and about this forest and the different creatures. And then he kind of goes out on this mission in the forest to find this book with his two, his nephew and his niece. And from there, a lot of craziness ensues, a lot of action. So yeah, that's as far as I'll go with the plot. I don't want to give anything away. I'm going to try to keep this spoiler free for the most part. But that's what Scariest Book Ever is about. And this book is one of the more adventure, like fantasy type Goosebumps books out there. It's not really horror, I would say. Some of the creatures in here are kind of scary, kind of creepy, honestly. But it's not really a scary book necessarily. So a couple of books that this reminded me a lot of that I feel like this one borrows elements from is Legend of the Lost Legend. Again, it's kind of about these kids who are just out in these woods, and it kind of has like this fairy tale vibe to it almost. They encounter a lot of just strange characters, very bizarre creatures that some of them might be friendly, some of them are out to kill them. And another one it does borrow from a little bit too, I feel like, is Beast from the East a little bit. It seems like it borrows some elements from that one too. It almost just kind of has this one of those vibes where R.L. Stine is just kind of throwing everything at you. It's not necessarily super incoherent or just completely random. There is reason for some of the stuff that happens. And some of the things are explained. It's not complete just randomness, but it's just a lot of the creatures in here. For example, the cover depicts like this bat with this almost human, kind of monster, but almost human looking head on it. That actually is in the story, and they are called man bats. And they do interact with the characters at a couple of occasions in this book. So, yes, this cover is not just bait, that is in the story. And there's some other very bizarre creatures in here, and it's a very action packed story. Basically, once the characters meet their uncle, meet Jesse, and then he tells them about this book, and then they head out into the forest. It's pretty much nonstop action from there. It's just transitioning from scene to scene of them fighting creatures or encountering some kind of dangerous situation in this forest. We get to, I'm not going to go too much further with the story and spoil anything, like I said, but we get a couple of twists along the way. This book is split up into 3 parts, I think. Let me see. I think it's split up into like 3 parts. Yeah. And it's a little bit longer too, kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but it's a little bit longer than normal. It's like 150 pages compared to like the 120 page average we get in a Goosebumps story. So it's a bit longer than usual. We get a couple of twists, of course. That's just par for the course with these. And the action doesn't really let up. It's very, very quickly paced. Starting off with my positives for this book, I liked the fantasy vibe that this had. I liked the different kinds of creatures in it. I just kind of like that more adventurous feel in a Goosebumps book because we don't necessarily get a ton of those. I mean, there's a decent handful of Goosebumps books that are written in this style, don't get me wrong, but we don't necessarily get a ton of them compared to, the more typical Goosebumps books. So I kind of like this more fantastical, adventurous style to this and that kind of like fairy tale vibe to it. And it is very action packed. It's there's something constantly going on in this book, and it is just kind of a fun story. It's just entertaining. Like I said, there's not a dull moment in here. Unfortunately, I can't really think of a whole lot else to say positive about it. I guess it is kind of good in the sense that it did subvert my expectations a little bit of what I expected this first book to be. Not that I was expecting something super predictable, but I was maybe expecting something a little bit more familiar. This is definitely somewhat fresh, I guess. If you're a longtime Goosebumps reader like myself, I think this book will not necessarily really surprise you, but just maybe surprise you a little bit, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's a little bit different. So in that sense, it's good. And it does have like some nice tension in it and some nice action sequences. And it's kind of a fun story. But unfortunately, I think that's where my positives end. I can't really find a whole lot else to say about this book in terms of things that I like about it. The characters in here feel just kind of bland. I mean, I know that's not something we look towards a lot in these types of books. R.L. Stine is not the greatest at characterization in general. But in this book, there wasn't really anything about any of the characters that really stood out to me. And another negative I have with it is also kind of the same thing as one of my positives. So I guess this could be considered like a mixed aspect, and that is just how fast-paced and relentless this book is with the action sequences. It feels just too quickly paced, a bit rushed, and we don't get enough breathing room. There's not quite enough explanation for certain things in the story. And at 150 pages, there's plenty of space in this book to provide some better logic and more explanation for things, in my opinion. there's plenty of page space for that. But R.L. Stine was really just focused on creating like a super snappy, just entertaining kind of roller coaster ride, I think, and just forgetting about logic. It's one of those types of stories. And I feel like it does hurt it a little bit. I feel like this one just needed some more breathing room. It just jumps from action sequence to a big twist. And the twists were a little bit predictable too, by the way. I kind of saw them coming. And it makes it hard to really get into the story when that's the case, when we get books like this that just don't provide enough context or time to get involved with the characters or really care about their situation all that much. I never really felt like I cared all that much what happened. It was just, I mean, I was kind of enjoying reading about the different scenarios and challenges and creatures that they came across in the forest and things like that. But I never felt truly invested in the story because it never stops to give you time to provide you explanation or care about the characters or what's going on exactly. And another thing too that left me just a little bit on a sour note is the scariest book ever itself, this book that they're hunting for. It doesn't give you enough information of what it is exactly. They never really go into too much detail of exactly what this book does, what its origins are. All you know is that this book is deemed the scariest book ever, and they're on the hunt for it because they can't let it fall into the wrong hands. That's pretty much all the information you're given about it. So I would have liked to have some more reason for them going after this book to know exactly what it's about. Like I said, there just wasn't quite enough context for me. And yeah, those are really my main negatives with this story. I feel like I wouldn't be as harsh on this book if maybe it was a little bit shorter. But at 150 pages, like I said, this book has plenty of room to, give us some more answers. Maybe give us a little bit more time to care about these characters. Just a little bit more details about them or something. I don't know. So yeah, that kind of left me a little bit soured. Overall, I don't really know what else to say about this book. If I'm being honest, overall, I think this left me just a little bit disappointed as like a very brand new series, the first book. My initial impressions of it aren't great. This book isn't bad, but it's not great either. I kind of struggled with a rating on this one. I really did. I was thinking like a flat 3 out of 5 stars at first. I was almost thinking like going down to like a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I couldn't really make up my mind. And still my rating might change on this book after I have some more time to digest it. Maybe after I read some more House of Shivers books. The next one doesn't come out till next year in like the spring, I think. Goblin Monday, the second book. So it might be a while. But for now, I think I'm going to settle on like, I don't know, probably like a 2.75 out of 5. So yeah, this book isn't bad at all. But it's really not that great either, or that memorable in my opinion. Really all it has going for it is it's just one of those more imaginative, just kind of fun, entertaining books. It's just nice, entertaining read, quickly paced, but just a little bit too much of that and not enough explanation for me. So yeah, man, I feel like there was something else I wanted to say about this, and I can't remember what it was now. Oh yeah, and then the twist ending for this book. Of course, as you guys know, we always get twist endings with Goosebumps books. This one's not really an exception. But the twist in this book really isn't like a big twist or anything, or some big reveal that like changes the story around. But we do get a little bit of a twist at the end. And I didn't really care for it because it just seems so inconsequential. And it's not a bad twist, like I said, but it doesn't really provide anything for the story. Not to give too much information or spoilers away, but it kind of has to do with the scariest book ever. And based on what we know, or what we don't know about this book, the little like twist thrown in there at the end, it just doesn't really do much. It's just kind of there. I don't really know why he even ended on that note, to be honest. It just feels like kind of an anticlimactic ending. So yeah, not like a huge negative there or anything. It just kind of had me asking like why. Like I guess what's the point of that once I reach the end? So yeah, it's just another little thing I wanted to mention, I guess. Yeah, I guess that's all I had to say. I know there was probably more I wanted to say about this book, and I forgot. Oh well. Anyways, that's my review for the very first book in the new Goosebumps House of Shivers series. Wasn't really enamored with it. I didn't really despise it either. It's just one of those books that it's okay. It's fine for what it is. Um, Probably like a 3 out of 5 star Goosebumps book. So yeah, let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this one down in the comments below. I'm curious to see what everyone else has to say about this book and how wrong I am about it and how awesome it probably is. So yeah, let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.